So इसकी जो इम्पोर्टेंस दूसरी आती है ना, जो मैं जिस वजह से लेके आना चाह रहा था इसको, कि ना सिर्फ ये हेल्थ पे इफ़ेक्ट करता है बल्कि इकोनॉमी पे इफ़ेक्ट करता है. And the US has established that about 124 billion US dollars are lost in repairing the damage done by the ACEs. So अगर ये हम अपने पॉलिसी मेकर्स को बताएं तो एडवर्स चाइल्डहुड इफेक्ट्स और अर्ली चाइल्डहुड डेवलपमेंट के ऊपर हम एक केस बिल्ड कर सकते हैं. Right, so that brings us to the last speaker for today's morning session, and that is Dr. Fanu. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. He is a senior global technical lead at Site Savers with over 20 years of experience in international development and education projects for children with disabilities. He has taught in the UK and worked in Bangladesh and Papua New Guinea. He has published articles in peer-reviewed international journals and authored a chapter on inclusive education in Roulet Handbook of International Development and Education. And today he will be talking on the education, not discrimination, learning from Malawi's inclusive preschool projects. So please, Dr. Guy.
Good afternoon. I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, we can see your slide. Thank you very much.
Okay, and you can obviously hear me, which is great. It's great to be here today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. My name is Guy Fanu, and I work for Site Savers. Site Savers, as you may know, is a UK-based international non-governmental organisation with 700 staff working in 33 countries across Africa and South Asia to eliminate avoidable blindness and support the empowerment of people with disabilities to learn, earn, and participate equally in society. In Pakistan, we are working with the Directorates of Special Education, ITA, and DeafReach to make the ICANN assessment of literacy and numeracy accessible for deaf children with visual impairments. While we are called Site Savers, it should be stressed that most of our education projects are pan-disability, i.e. concerned with promoting inclusive education of good quality for children with a wide variety of impairments and conditions. So on to my next slide. My presentation today will be on Site Savers' Early Childhood Development and Education Project in Malawi. I will begin by providing some introductory information before discussing learnings from previous work in the field of ECD in Malawi, which we have applied to the latest phase of the project. Malawi, as you probably know, is a country in Southeast Asia. It's in Southeastern Africa, and as the map shows, is long and narrow, landlocked, and bordered on the east by Lake Malawi, which is 750 kilometers long and 75 kilometers wide. It has a population of just under 20 million and is one of the most disadvantaged countries in the world, ranked 169 out of 191 in the 2022 Human Development Index. A significant percentage of children have some sort of disability due to malnutrition, lack of access to healthcare, and other factors. For instance, a disability prevalence study of children attending 48 community-based childhood care centres in Tiolo district found 5.4% of children aged 24 were disabled, rising to 29.3% among older children. 11.7% of the children screened were certified as having development delays. In some countries, ECDE takes a form of preschools attached to primary schools. However, in Malawi, ECDE takes the form of community-based childhood care centres, or CBCCs as they are known, set up and run either by civil society organisations or by the communities themselves. It has been estimated there are 5,665 CBCs across the country, serving 400,000 children aged 3 to 6, mostly children living in rural areas. The caregivers or teachers in these CBCCs are generally volunteers, and the CBCCs are run by management committees composed of local people. The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare has formal responsibility for the CBCCs, but their involvement in the running of these CBCCs tends to be minimal. The ECDE system in Malawi has several strengths, at least in theory. CBCCs are set up and run by local communities. So local communities often have a strong sense of ownership of CBCCs and contribute their time and resources to CBCCs. As CBCCs are outside the formal education system, there are possibilities within them for promoting child-centered, play-based education. The caregivers are mostly volunteers, so many of them are very dedicated and enthusiastic. And the Malawi model is a very low-cost form of provision, so it's more sustainable and scalable than other models. However, there are weaknesses. The CBCCs are underfunded with very limited government investment in them. Most CBCs are in very poor condition and therefore unconducive for learning and lacking accessibility for children with disabilities. Many of the caregivers have very limited formal education and receive little or no training in ECDE. As a result, they may struggle to provide children with high quality inclusive education, especially children with disabilities. The dilapidated infrastructure, large classes, and lack of resources in many of these centres only adds to their difficulties. While many of the caregivers are very dedicated, there's a high turnover of staff at the centre. Having provided an overall picture of the situation, I now want to focus on SightSaver's ECDE project in Malawi. First, it should be noted that we've been working in ECDE in Malawi since 2012. So we've developed good relationships with key actors and a sound understanding of ECDE realities in the country. At present, we're working with 49 ECDE centres in AIOU, a district in the central region. We are working with multiple stakeholders and around 49 centres. In 2022, 201 children with disabilities were enrolled in these centres, more than half of them girls, a 139% increase in numbers from the previous year. I'm now going to describe some of the strategies SightSavers and our local partners have adopted, focusing on information, education and communication materials, the promotion of child-centered learning, imaginative use of resources, the development of integrated services, income generation, and advocacy. This slide shows the front page of a training flip chart we developed with the caregivers. It was produced in a local language, Chichewa, and as the slide shows, is highly pictorial. It consists of short units, each looking at different aspects of inclusion, such as child-centered learning, accessible environments, and child safeguarding. The training methodology is highly participatory, with the caregivers being encouraged to identify their own inclusive strategies rather than being told what to do. One of the strengths of this flip chart is it enables each CBCC to organize its own continuous professional development. We have worked with CBCCs to identify learning activities which are play-based, developmentally appropriate, relevant to the children's lives, and focused on specific skill areas. This slide shows the children and their teachers playing a parachute game with a large circular multicolored piece of fabric and a ball. Together they are maneuvering the ball around the cloth, in the process developing teamwork skills and fine and gross motor skills. As you may be aware, there are many different parachute games for young children. Just Google parachute games. We have worked with the caregivers to identify locally available, low cost and no cost teaching and learning resources, which can be found in the natural environment, purchased in the market, or actually made by the caregivers. This illustration shows one of the more expensive resources used in the CBCs, but also a vital resource, an adapted bicycle, which enables children with mobility difficulties to be transported safely to and from the CBCs. Another strategy we've used in the project is to integrate education services with available health and social services. So children with disabilities receive joined up provision. This picture shows Dayton, a 3-year-old boy with his mother, and Tobias, a health surveillance assistant. Tobias visits the family every 2 weeks and explained, "When I come here, my main duty is to do some exercises with the child. When I do that, the parents also learn to do certain exercises when I'm away. At first, when you stretched his arms and legs, he used to cry, but now things have changed. He's no longer crying, he's just smiling, which means he's feeling good, and there is a very big improvement. It is intended that Dayton will regularly attend a CBCC when he's physically ready." The CBCCs receive very little support from the government. We have therefore assisted them to generate much needed revenue. This has involved helping them to establish a goat breeding scheme and community gardens in which they grow maize. Through growing maize, the CBCs have also been able to provide all the children with daily meals of porridge. This encourages parents to send their children to the CBC or much more able to learn. Sorry, trying to move on to the next slide. Advocacy, finally, advocacy is a very important strategy. At present, we are advocating with the National Disability and Civil Society Organization. Sorry, at the moment, we are working with our partners, National Disability Coalition, and a civil society organization of parents of children with disabilities to persuade the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare to invest more in ECDE and particularly to invest more in disability inclusive ECDE. We're advocating at district and national levels to have the maximum impact. Ultimately, we recognize that children with disabilities in Malawi will only be able to access preschool provision of good quality when there is much greater and targeted investment in ECDE, particularly disability inclusive ECDE, and there are policy frameworks and plans to support this. I hope this presentation has been useful and interesting. While there are many differences between Malawi and Pakistan, I hope you will be able to identify some similarities between the ECD situation in Malawi and the situation in Pakistan. I also hope that some of the strategies discussed in this presentation may be relevant to Pakistan. Thank you very much for listening.